Yo, so we're live. This is Steve from Sport Tank, and we're doing a very special live stream. I don't know what I was going to call it then, but a very special live stream. Um, what do they call the EGM? Is it Extraordinary General Meeting?
Yeah.
So I consider this one an extraordinary general live stream. So yeah, this isn't like a normal broadcast for us. We are reacting to what I and many see as terrible news over the weekend, and with the announcement that BAFA made, or a statement they released saying that they weren't going to entertain an EGM that had been put forward to them by 19 clubs. And so what we've done here is got two guests involved who are heavily involved in that body of work, as in pulling those clubs together and sending the proposal over to BAFA. To sort of come on and talk a little bit about, I suppose, a little bit about the history of it, but also, I don't know, like maybe I don't know if you're going to calm nerves, tell everyone to chill because like people are going crazy, or I'm not 100% sure what the angle is at this point, but it would be good to know from you guys, what happens now. Like, one of the main questions I keep seeing is, they can't do this. Can they do this? This doesn't seem right, And so I wanted to myself talk to you guys about this. It made sense to have it as a live stream. We've got people obviously watching. We've got almost 50 already, which is cool. And someone just said extraordinary live stream rejected. Yeah, okay, sorry. So we've had a brief discussion before this, just to sort of level set everyone. So we know what we're going to talk about, but I don't know the detail, and I'm sort of all ears just as much as everyone else is here. I'm going to try and zip my mouth and let you guys talk as much as possible. But certainly interested in sort of unpacking this and understanding where your where your mindset is, because I was pissed off about it, these guys just keep doing the wrong thing, and I suppose any other expletive that you could think of. And as I know your DMs did, Coach Rains, mine just went crazy on, was it Saturday night they did it? I'm fairly sure it was Saturday night. Friday night.
Friday night.
I was no point in me watching telly at that point. It was just message after message, and so I don't know, like, after that initial reaction, I still feel the same, and it would be nice to sort of know a little bit more from you guys.
Okay.
I suppose we're probably best off starting with you guys sort of introducing yourselves, because I'm being quite assumptive that everyone knows you. But yeah, if you guys just want to quickly introduce yourselves and your involvement with this, I don't know what you call it, consortium, group.
Okay.
That would be great.
All right. Should we introduce ourselves, and then I've got a little bit of update of where we are and
how we got however you want to do it.
Yeah. So briefly, I'll introduce myself. Steve Rains. I've been in the sport for a long time. I'm currently head coach at Bournemouth University and head coach at the Solent Thrashers in the Premier Division. Clive?
Hi, my name is Clive Dobbin. I was previously general manager of Solent Seahawks, and I was also involved in BAFA in terms of being operations manager, and also managed the adult league and done the fixtures for the junior league. So have a little bit of insight into kind of the challenges perhaps involved in organising and running the league.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. I was also at one point BAFA operations director, and Clive and I worked together on operating the league. I was the operations director, so we claim a little bit of experience of what's going on, and also Clive is our legal expert because his job is as a lawyer, so he's looking after the legal side of things for us if there's a need for that. So the thing that I really wanted to get over as an upfront thing is that, I know a lot of people got angry on Friday night, but there's good news. All right, there is good news. So I do hope that anger is going to quell, and that people will look at the way forward that's been agreed with BAFA as being a positive thing. And at the moment, it was 19 clubs. We've got 20 clubs involved in the group that are discussing this, and we're quite happy. The door's not closed. If other clubs want to contact me and say, look, include us in the group discussion that's going on prior to the next step, then we'd be more than happy for other clubs to be involved. So really, why did I get involved, and why did the other 19 clubs get involved in this situation? I think, if you observe what's gone on this year with the league, the league is currently in crisis, and something definitely needs to change. And I think everybody accepts that. And in fact, Pete Ackley accepted it at the town hall meeting on Saturday to say that, yes, things have gone wrong. The experience is not what it should be, and things do need to change. So I just want to get that point over, that we're working with BAFA. We've not called for votes of no confidence, or we've not attacked individuals or the organization itself. And we want to move positively forward, and we're trying to help with that. And for those one or two people that have mentioned that I'm anti-BAFA, I'll just point you back to my last interaction with them, was when they were changing the Articles of Association, and I got a group together then, and we put forward some amendments. Bar one of those amendments, BAFA accepted all of the amendments we put forward and thanked us for them. So we've got a track record of working in this way positively with BAFA, and BAFA accepting the fact that we're here and trying to help. The other thing that I've heard on the grapevine, as you do, is that this is all anti-national program. That would be totally crazy. Both Clive and I, for example, were involved in the national program at one point. I think we both support it. Certainly the 19 other teams that we've been speaking to support the national program. And it's not an attack on the national program. I think it's a good thing for us to have, and a great experience, especially for the under 19 kids that I coach. They made friendships for life, and have gone on, a lot of them, to be star players in our league, and indeed in German leagues since. So the other question you might ask is, why are BAFA now agreeing to meet the 20 teams? Because that's the step that was agreed with Pete Ackley after the town hall, that they would hold a meeting, and that's going to happen on the 4th of August, to discuss the issues with the league and to develop an action plan to put things right for next year. So why is it me and 19 other teams? Well, that's the whole point, I think, that we would make, is that we asked for an EGM because we thought everybody should be involved in the discussion. BAFA, unfortunately, turned down the idea of an EGM, but have agreed to a meeting with us, which is going to take place on the 4th of August. On the point of the EGM, I'm just going to bring Clive in to just give a view on whether actually, I think rejecting the EGM was a mistake on their part. Clive, do you want to just pick up your view on that?
Yeah, it's probably worth responding to that one. So I think if you looked at, and it's been on social media, the response that BAFA put out was that the resolutions that have been put forward were inconsistent with the articles, and therefore the EGM could serve no useful purpose. I think on that one, I'll probably say two things. So under the Companies Act, you can decline an article, and it's section 303(5) of the Companies Act, if the resolution, if moved, would be inconsistent with the company's constitution. But that's separate to the power to call an EGM. So they have to hold an EGM. They can have a debate over the resolutions at that EGM, but merely because a resolution that was proposed is, they say, invalid, doesn't remove the obligation to hold an EGM. So on that front, I think they were wrong in their response. Okay, secondly, sorry, Steve, just second point. The second point is that the resolution, if passed, would be inconsistent with the articles. And their point there is that under the articles of BAFA, the power to manage the league is reserved to the board. So they say the board can't be told how to do that because that would be inconsistent with the articles. I think that's just simply wrong. Yes, the resolutions accept that the power to manage the league is reserved to the board. We are just asking the board to exercise that power in a certain way. We're not asking power to be given to some other third party or some other body. We're asking the board to do it in a certain way. And by the board saying that they weren't prepared to listen to that in an EGM context, it's basically saying that they believe they are unanswerable or unaccountable to its members. And an organisation or a company is always answerable to its members. So I think, yes, they've agreed to have the meeting, and that is a step forward. I think it sends out a really worrying message that they weren't prepared to have that in the form of an EGM where all clubs can be represented and can speak and make points at that meeting, because the BAFA have to be accountable to those clubs. So I think that's why, just picking up Steve's point, why I got involved with this. And kind of on social media, some people said that because I was involved this year, it's just sour grapes. It's not sour grapes at all. It's not any personal vendetta on my part. I think actually, in my experience of being involved in the league, the way the league's been managed this year is probably the worst ever. And I think that's damaging both to clubs and its members and the future of Brid Bowl. And being involved in Brid Bowl, I care passionately about American football. We're in the UK, and that's why I got involved in this. It's not a personal vendetta. It's through love of the sport.
So a couple of things just on what you said there, Clive. So those 2 points you've raised, you said BAFA, in your professional opinion, or in your opinion, I don't want to align this to your work, but in your opinion, understanding what they've said and understanding and reading through the documentation, the relevant documentation, you think they were wrong on two accounts. Why are you guys not firing that back at BAFA and instead accepting a meeting on the 4th of August?
I can answer.
Yeah,
I
cool.
can answer.
So,
I can answer
because that
that
seems
one,
illogical
Clive.
to me from my perspective. Like,
yeah,
we've got a point here. They've done something wrong, and we're just dancing to their merry tune. That's what it feels like.
So I'll answer that. As I said at the very outset of this, the reason I got involved was to try and head off negativity and basically what looked like was heading for a punch-up between the clubs and BAFA, right? And try and get some positive compromise solutions discussed and hopefully then adopted in whatever form. Because I would say here and now that the resolutions we were going to put to the EGM aren't hard and fast. There's obviously, in any negotiation over change, you listen to the other side and decide, in some cases, maybe on a compromise. I'm sure both sides have got their red line issues. Certainly Pete made that point when we met him after the town hall, that he felt, the board felt, that a lot of what we put forward was really valid and needed to be discussed, but there might be some red line issues where they felt they couldn't go to. And similarly with the group that I'm talking to, because we've been communicating throughout this as a group, we've got some issues that we might make some compromise on, but also some red line ones that where we would not want to compromise on. Clive's explained the legal situation, and I believe that there's a timescale for response to their refusal of the EGM, which is quite extended. So the fact that there's been an offer to sit down and talk and hopefully come to an amicable solution, I think it would be crazy not to give that every possible chance. Given what I think is genuine commitment on their side to want to try and find solutions, and certainly a passion on our side for something to be done, and it must be done in time for the preparations for the next season, because things can't go on as they have done this year. And again, I'd emphasize that if other clubs or people want to put forward other ideas for us to discuss with Pete and the board on the 4th of August, then please, message me, get involved in the group, tell us what you want us to have discussed at that meeting. Because there are other issues. I mean, I asked, Pete did a thing at the town hall where he discussed at length in his opening piece about the 10-year plan and BAFA's responsibility as a national governing body, and how what the aims were in the long term and all of that sort of stuff. And my question to him was, okay, but whenever I hear him talk, I only hear him talk about national governing body and the corporate side of that. What I think we're trying to do is bring to the surface the fact that they have another extremely important role that they never talk about. And that is that they run a league. In fact, not a league, but a number of leagues. And right now, no focus is being put on that grassroots product, without which I believe that the elite product that they work on cannot have the type of success that we had back in the 80s when we won the whole of Europe, the A group. We won the whole of Europe, the A group, in 89, I believe it was, when we had a thriving league in this country with 120 kitted teams. Right. And I believe the restrictions we put on our league and the lack of focus we have on our league is also holding us back internationally. So, as I said, our whole thrust is towards positivity and finding solutions and moving things forward so that we can regain that number one position in Europe. And I know some people say, oh, well, it's not possible. It is possible. It has to be possible because it was possible before. There's just things that we're doing now that I think stop it. And I think a good illustration of the fact that there's more for them to be doing was the question that immediately followed me at the town hall was from somebody from the Women's League who said, okay, what are BAFA doing about the Women's League, where currently you allow teams to play 5-on-5 or 7-on-7, whatever suits them? What are we doing about getting to 11-on-11? Because that's what we're going to be expected to play when we go and represent at the World Games. Yeah. And we don't have that experience unless we go and play in the Swedish Women's League, which is 11-on-11. And what does that do for development of the sport in this country? Mm-hmm. And Pete said, oh, yeah, well, the plan for the Women's League is obviously 11-on-11. That's the plan. Obviously, it's not the immediate plan, But then obviously somebody then piped up from the back to say, is it also the plan for juniors? Because we're in exactly the same situation where, the kids from the under-19s did a great job at the weekend, but playing against a really well-drilled Finnish team was really difficult for them, because for some of them, it might have been their first 11-on-11 game. The ones that played at university obviously play 11-on-11, but in our league, they wouldn't. They'd play 9-on-9. And it's those 4 additional players on the field make quite a big difference.
Yeah, of course.
So the other thing that I think, I've heard discussed is the fact that BAFA shouldn't be running the league, and it's a view that I personally hold as well. I mean, the reason BAFA runs the league is because of some problems we had a while back, where BAFA was the national governing body separate from the league. Then there were some big issues with the league, which we won't go into because we'll be here all night. And BAFA took over running the league. The fact of the matter is BAFA doesn't have to be the one that runs the league.
They took it over temporarily as well, right? Let's make
and exactly. And maybe it's time for that temporary period to end. The only problem is, there would have to be a lot of discussion about how the finances will work, because I know from my experience as BAFA ops director, when we lost the Bucks League out of BAFA, that took a huge chunk of revenue away from BAFA. Right? They lost a lot of money on that deal, and if all of the league operation was taken into another organisation, there'd have to be some arrangement for how BAFA was going to be funded through that, and that would be an interesting thing for someone to try and sort out.
So just quickly, I just want to go back to this whole accepting the meeting on the 4th, right? First of all, so there's a couple of bits about that. The first part is what do, like, so they're meeting you anyway, right? So you ask for a meeting, they're meeting you anyway, but it's for the group of 20 or more, if as more join, hopefully. Clubs. What do BAFA gain by doing that? Why were they so keen to get legal advice, pay for legal advice, assumingly, and stop and not have an EGM? What's the difference between those two meetings?
Well, Clive might confirm this, but I'm going to give my view. My view is an EGM resolution passed is kind of then difficult for the board to ignore. At the meeting that we're due to have on the 4th of August, one of the things I was clear with Pete on before we actually agreed to the meeting was it wouldn't be just another version of the town hall. So it's not just a talking shop. It's the aim is to develop an action plan, and again, it needs to be emphasised that BAFA are getting feedback in directly as well, and they'll be bringing that to the party as well. So they'll be bringing it. So it's not just us and the ideas that we've got. There will be ideas that have come through direct feedback to BAFA that BAFA will bring to the table for discussion. Right. So, but I guess that the bottom line is there's no compulsion on them to make an agreement there and accept anything. So EGM kind of tied, 4th of August meeting, a bit more freedom for them to decide what to pick up and what to drop.
Okay.
Yeah, and just chip in. I agree with that, and I think I suspect what they didn't want to do is be bound by any resolutions that were passed at an EGM. Going back to your point, is that why didn't we just go back and challenge the EGM? There's a couple of ways to do that. We could there is the ability under the Companies Act to call our own EGM. But on the basis they said any discussion at an EGM wouldn't serve any useful purpose, even if we held our own EGM, would they actually listen to anything anyway? So you get much further forward. Or you could go into a legal dispute with them. But all that's going to do is spend more members' money entering into a legal dispute, and obviously there was the reaction to that already. So I think it's certainly worth, and ultimately we're doing this for the good of the sport, and therefore if we can reach a resolution, we need to do that. Obviously we need to be mindful that they can't just give lip service at that meeting, give us the right management speak, and then just carry on as they are, because I'm conscious that one of the fundamental issues, and I don't want to get into the detail necessarily, but one of the fundamental issues with this season was doing a compressed number of game days, and that just didn't work with the number of refs available, and therefore a lot of games didn't have referees.
Mm-hmm.
They were warned about that quite clearly before the season started. They were told it wouldn't work, but they decided to plough ahead anyway. So we need to be careful that they either don't just give us lip service at that meeting, or they just plough on anyway, regardless of what's been told to them. Because the people who are running the league were warned this season would be a disaster. They chose to ignore it, and the season's been a disaster.
Mm.
I think the other thing that I should say is that this situation has led to a lot of discussion, and one of the things people have said to me is, well, the Solent Thrashers are the only Premier team that's involved in this, so that gives it less weight. I personally don't agree with that. I don't think the number of Premier teams involved is actually relevant to the weight of the argument or what the outcome should be. And obviously, the Premier teams don't have the refereeing issues, and the Premier teams, people think, are happy with the compacted season. But I've spoken now to 4 or 5 of the other Premier teams who obviously are not on record with us, but are chatting to me saying, the compacted season is not good for anyone. The compacted as much as it has been, where teams in the Prem have been running 3 games on the bounce. And all right, most Premier teams have big squads, and when they lose people through injury, they can generally still put a team out on the next occasion. But what you're not getting is the same quality of product that you would get if there was proper rest between games. And if there was, we all film like crazy, right? And if there's no time between games, it's really difficult to take full advantage of that preparation that you would do from film. Not impossible to do any, but we're not producing the product that we could be. So don't believe that all of the Premier teams are happy with the compacted season, because they're not. That's a fact.
And so, and then just going on my second point that I wanted to raise here is, it seems odd hearing you talk about the structure. It's like, it feels like BAFA want there to be a separation between what you're doing and what the membership thinks, when in actual fact we're using the article of association in a constitutional way to represent part of the membership, right? And like it feels to me that BAFA are trying to sort of like outcast you and this group to serve their means, so they can say, oh, well, that's just some disgruntled splinter group of people, rather than actually being and I think it serves them to do that, rather than you saying, oh, we found this problem, we've got enough people to back it, and now we need to talk about it to everyone. It's just them sort of handling this thing in the quiet.
I mean, this is one of the frustrating aspects of the way the relationship between BAFA and the membership has been developing. When the new board took over, which I was a part of when Nicole first came in, one of the big things that was emphasized was, we're going to be more open, we're going to be in touch, etc., right? And actually the opposite has been happening, that there's been more distance, because at one point there was an annual clubs meeting to sort out structure, and then from there came schedule, right? And the clubs had a voice and had the opportunity to have a say. Where is that voice and that opportunity now? It's one of the things we're going to discuss with Pete on the 4th of August, that there should be the opportunity for clubs. In fact, it should be, in my view, made compulsory that teams send at least one person to that club's meeting, at at least one person they could send to, because we got that in the articles that 2 people could go to BAFA meetings. But
that's right. They tried to reduce it to 1, didn't they?
They did, yeah, and we put the amendment in for 2. But it is a fact of there is, and if somebody out there is saying, oh yeah, this is just Steve having a go at them, tell me this, all right? Okay, I had a lot of people have been talking to me about, oh, you know, what do they spend on the national program? And the answer, if you look at the accounts, which are on the BAFA website, they spent in 2019-20, the last real year that's on, for which there's accounts, 219,000. And people then say to me, well, wait a minute, don't the players pay to play for Great Britain?
88,000.
And Pete said on Saturday, the players shouldn't be having to pay. So then people say, well, what was the 219,000 spent on? And the answer is, I don't know, and you don't know, and nobody in the membership knows, because they will not publish the detail. Now, why do companies normally not publish the detail of their accounts? They don't publish it so that their competitors don't get an advantage over them. Mm-hmm. Well, here's news. There is no competitor. Right, there's no one to hide the numbers from, because there's no other game in town, you know, as far as national governing body for American football is concerned, and there won't be, because, you know, the sports councils will only recognize one. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason to hide those details. We should know.
And then just to pick up a practical example in terms of listening, if you look at the youth, or sort of the under 16 setup, BAFA announced a move to 7-on-7s versus 5-on-5, and a lot of teams didn't know about that before it was announced, and it was announced after all the prep for the season started. That caused a lot of uproar, so that proposal was withdrawn. BAFA then promised to consult with clubs, and about halfway through the season, BAFA then just announced that they were going to move to 7 versus 7s without any further consultation. So they promised consultation with clubs on the move to 7 versus 7. They then didn't do consultation with clubs. So they can't, if they aren't giving a club and they aren't listening to the clubs, even when they promised to do so, they can't then really complain when clubs go to the option of an EGM, because they aren't being listened to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the important point here is this is not just BAFA bashing what we're doing now. It's making the point that there isn't a voice, and there needs to be a voice. There needs to be engagement, and that's what we're trying to achieve positively, try and achieve engagement with BAFA. So it's not, nobody's going after anybody, you know, and nobody's, you know, trying to have a punch up with anybody. We're trying to find practical solutions. I mean, you know, some people may take umbrage at Clive saying this is the worst year ever in terms of league organisation, but I've never known it in the past where a playoff structure was issued halfway through a season, and then the power of the Premier teams actually got that thrown out,
removed.
You know, so you know, I'm afraid there is a problem, and I appreciate everyone involved, you know, pretty much volunteers, but that doesn't mean people can't complain, and that kind of is another thing that's bugging me, if you like. I know that in the national programme contracts, there's a clause that says anybody involved in the national programme can't speak out against BAFA, right? Which seems not so good. And then when this started, I basically had some people on to me about, daring to speak out against BAFA, to disagree with them. And I actually wrote to Nicole and said, look, hey, have I suddenly found myself now in a Stalinist organisation where an opposite opinion is completely unwelcome? And she has absolutely reassured me that that's not the case, that they welcome, the input that we're giving and the attempts that we're trying to that we're making to try and get some amicable solutions to what are undoubtedly and clearly everybody has accepted are problems.
Yeah, which they already were told will be problems, but they decided to ignore that.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few questions coming up in the chat, but before we move to those, I just wanted to ask, and this was raised by Ollie actually. He wanted to, if you could give a brief overview of was it 6 proposals that you've put together?
Yeah.
Sorry,
funnily enough, that was the last thing on my agenda, Steve.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay,
It was just to run through the resolutions that we put to the EGM that's been rejected, that will form part of the agenda for the meeting on the 4th. I want to emphasize that this was never a blueprint that said, this is it, this is what has to be. You know, it's a list of things that are clearly significant discussion points that the discussion needs to be had. So the first resolution, which I'll be honest, it was a bit sort of in your face. I want people to take notice so that there's a discussion on this. Said that the Domestic American Football League competition should be prioritized by the board and its competition management above any other objective of the association. And some people have taken that as a slight on everything else. But I think the clear point is, at the moment, the league has no focus on it, no attention paid to it. It's not in the business, the 10-year plan. You know, the development of the league is not in the 10-year plan. The operation of the league is not, you know, if they've got an operating plan. I mean, I was in business for a long time. I don't think I ever worked on a 10-year plan. I think the most we ever went for was a 3-year plan. Yeah. And then pretty much by year 2, it was having to be rewritten because we live in a fast moving world, and it's even faster moving now. But anyway, so we had an operating plan, and I haven't seen an operating plan that puts any focus on the development of the league or the operation of the league. So that's what resolution 1 is about, getting a discussion on some focus on league football. Resolution 2 was the league structure and schedule should be determined and published to all member clubs no later than the 1st of December in the year preceding the year of competition. Failure to achieve this should result in the board dismissing the competition manager and taking such steps to ensure the structure and schedule is issued by the 1st of January. Now, again, some people have been injured by the fact that there's talk of a dismissal. The bottom line, matter of fact thing is that the year that Clive and I did this together, and I think he achieved it the following year after I'd gone, right, is that is a realistic and possible timescale. If you set deadlines for clubs and you mean them, and you make it clear that you mean them, and then you leave enough space in the schedule that is set for absolutely essential changes still to be made. Okay, so that was resolution 2. Resolution 3 was the available weeks for league competitions should be extended and maintained at a minimum of 16 weeks, and the coaches' convention should be moved to coincide with the BAFA convention in the first week in April. This will leave 1 weekend for national team activities, which will otherwise take place Friday to Saturday of a competition weekend. This will allow for a sufficient spread of fixtures to enable player recovery and the availability of officials' crews at all levels. Now, obviously, there's a lot of talking points in that one too. Yeah. Okay, a lot of talking points, but I think the essential thing is that really there needs to be 16 weeks for league football, and how that gets resolved can be a matter of discussion. But the solution that was put in this year isn't the solution. And I've already explained to you that there are Premier teams that are not happy with it. There's clearly teams throughout the structure that are not getting referees are not happy with it. Mm-hmm. I think Clive would agree with me that when you set a schedule, the very first thing you do is have a conversation with BAFA. about how many crews do you have available on each of these given weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you set your schedule around that availability. Okay. That was not done this year. I can tell you 100% it was not done. This is not BAFA's fault.
No.
And BAFA are, in my view, really good at knowing what availability they've got. And I think, they've done it for a number of years. They should be trusted. And as far as self-officiating goes, I put in the self-officiating guidelines, how to self-officiate a game, in the year that we did it. And it was put there as an absolute backstop. Okay, an absolute backstop for if a game could not be covered any other way, that it would be able to happen through self-officiating. And obviously there would be enough teams with a week off that week to get level 1 coaches involved. It was never meant to be part of the scheduling process to schedule for self-officiation, which is what was done this year. They built a schedule knowing that they were putting games onto self-officiating, and they built a schedule that was so tight that the majority of coaches were not available to go and referee because they're already involved in their own games.
Yeah.
So, lots to discuss on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Resolution 4. Now that Bucks players are no longer registered through BAFA, the registration year should be altered back to April to March. This will allow pre-season training to be covered by the preceding year's membership, removing the risk of unregistered training. Between January and March each year, there will be a £10 pre-season category of membership to cover newcomers and those unregistered returning to the sport. Once the new season starts, these members will need to convert to a full-time membership by paying a full membership fee. To bridge the gap between 22 and 23, this year's membership should be extended through to March. Now, the point of this one, it's been a long had debate. Teams start their activity, a lot of teams before Christmas, certainly into January, February, March. Okay. BAFA only need to look at their registration pattern to know that they're currently overseeing a lot of unregistered training. Yeah. Right. Because people are not on the 1st of October buying their new membership. They wait until February, March. Now, I'll be honest, because I know there's serious consequences of that, we really push at the Thrashers to get everybody to buy early, and also it saves you a last minute rush. But, BAFA should be making this system make it easier. The £10 pre-season category, right now, I know you've just started playing again, but Steve, but say you hadn't started playing and you were considering coming back next year, right? And you weren't sure, should you have to buy a £50 membership, at the beginning of January, and then decide after 2 sessions that actually, I can't go back to this game, right? Yeah. And we have people that have done that. We've got some people on our roster that paid the £50 and then didn't go beyond their 4th or 5th training session, right? And I think, this is a little bit of a revenue opportunity for BAFA, but it's certainly, something to be discussed. Resolution 5 was the association is instructed to negotiate a new insurance policy that does not require UK residency, as we have had previously, which will allow teams to have imported players, putting us on an equal footing with the European leagues. Each team should then be restricted to a maximum of 5 North American or Mexican imports. The league will no longer have a strict amateur status, because obviously those imports, if they came in, people would probably find them accommodation or help them get a job or whatever. So that doesn't make them purely amateur. Now, Immigration laws might stop that happening, but right now, right, it's the restriction that's stopping our league competing with the residency restriction is stopping our league competing with the European leagues, because you can't even bring in anyone from Europe to play for you. They have to be resident here for 6 months before they register, unless they're in the US military or on a student visa. All right. So it's an attempt to try and help us get back to having one of the best leagues in Europe, so that our young players don't have to have, at the moment, there's no aspiration for young players to play in our Premier Division. Their aspiration is to play in the GFL or the AFL, or Finland or whatever. And we need to, as a sport, wake up, smell the coffee. We put that in during that really bad time for the league. Those restrictions were put in. We did previously have a limit on the number of Americans because we had import players. There's nothing really there to stop us going back to it other than the rule that says we can't, and it's our rule. So we should be able to do something about that. Resolution 6 was the red and yellow card punishment process for forfeited games, which was withdrawn without consultation in 2022, should be reinstated. This will return integrity to the league and protect paying club members from rogue clubs.
Yep.
This is a no-brainer.
No-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I took over as the ops director, this was already in place. I think the credit has to go to Russ Hewitt.
Yeah.
Who put this in place.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was Russ.
And it was a really good idea, and it stopped the wave of forfeits that were killing the game. And if you look this year, I know people are going to say, oh well, pandemic, COVID, but I'm sorry, I don't believe all of those. At the moment, it's too easy not to play a game, and that's got to be reversed, because the teams that are losing games are just losing part of the season that they've paid for. Yeah. So
and money as well.
Yeah.
There are clubs that put on, a lot into a match day. So like Scunthorpe Alphas they've had two home games taken away from them last minute, and they've poured money into it and arranged, I don't know, food and entertainment.
Yeah. And those guys get what, an 8-game season, and now they've got a 6-game season.
Do they get an 8? Are they? I thought
Division 2.
Are they Div 2?
Or are they Division 1? I don't know.
Put in Div 1. I'm not sure. I'll check.
Anyway, there are teams that have lost games that have had a reduction on what is already a reduced season. So, and the final resolution, again, this upsets some people. BAFA will not sanction the Bucks All-Star game on a BAFA League competition weekend, but will instead request that it's held on a Wednesday, just as the Bucks finals are. And actually, it's been pointed out to me the Bucks finals were on a Tuesday, so thank you for that. But the point is, it was midweek, all right? And somebody said to me, "Oh yeah, well, the coaches have to work." Well, the people that coach the finals have to work as well. So if it can be done, and the point is, it's a huge safety issue, the decision that BAFA made this year, which was that players could play a full game on the Saturday and then go into a full contact training session, or worse still, a BAFA National League game on the Sunday.
Yeah. Because
it was the first week of the actual season. So they could play 2 fully competitive games, right? 2 days on the trot. You're not allowed to do that in IFAF competition. So it's not right. And again, BAFA should be taking that safety risk out of the system, in our view.
It's just someone just coming up and just commenting there. Alpha's a Div 2 and cancellations reduced to 2 home games. So
right. So that's my run through of the resolutions we put forward. They're not exclusive, so other people can put other things forward, and they may well have done directly to BAFA, or they can put it to us if they want to get a discussion within our group. We're open to people being involved. In fact, we'd like more teams to be involved. At the moment, there are 9 of us, I think, going physically to the meeting. If people want to get involved, physical attendance at the meeting on the 4th of August would be the way to do it.
Where is that being held?
It's not been agreed with BAFA just yet, but it will be Midlands somewhere.
Okay.
Based on the people that we've got coming.
So now, just a couple of questions now that I know the answer to, but I want to put them to you because this is stuff that I've sort of come across, and one, I think is a little bit of misunderstanding, but 2, I think some of it's I don't know, I think people are just trying to criticize. So I just want to sort of ask you about these things. So first of all, do you want to take over BAFA?
Me or Clive?
Your organisation?
The answer is no. I obviously I was involved before. In case people don't know, I resigned because I didn't agree with the decision to employ a CEO,
a paid CEO. I remember
a paid CEO. That doesn't mean I hate Pete Ackerley or I've got anything personal against him. I didn't agree with the position. I thought, if there was money going to be spent, it should be on administration. They've since done that with one administrator being added to the payroll. I thought at the time it should be 2 administrators and not a CEO.
Yeah, I keep saying that, but
I still hold that view. But do I want to take over? No, I don't want to take over. If somebody said to me, "We need you to do a job," I've made it clear to Nicole and to Pete all the time since I've left the board that if there's anything I can do to help, I'm happy to help. But I'm not expecting any calls.
Okay.
Yeah, and just in my position, I'm not doing this to take over BAFA. I've got no intention of doing so. I'm doing it because I love the sport, and I'm truly saddened as to how this year's panned out.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah,
guys.
and we're both very involved in a upward moving Premier Division team.
Yeah. You guys. Well, you're still in for a shout for the playoffs, aren't you?
Yeah, okay.
It's mathematically possible.
If anyone's a betting man, no, I shouldn't do that. No, I can't bet.
Can't bet against your team.
No.
Okay, cool. So this question's come up. Actually, sorry. Before I go into the actual comments and questions, is there anything else that you guys wanted to get across? I think that sort of understand where you've come from, what's actually happened, how you interpret it, and what you're planning on doing next. Is there anything after that? Or is it just a case of reviewing what BAFA say in terms of their plan of action?
We have to find out where we get to. I think one thing I am clear on is that within the group of 20 clubs that we're all currently discussing this, the one thing is that we're very clear that something's got to change because the sport will die if it continues with this kind of arrangement. So, and I think, in fairness, I think Pete accepted that on Saturday as well, because he was saying that the experience this year has not been what it should be, and we need to do something about it.
He should have followed that up with and here's my resignation. It's his job, right?
Nobody's looking for that.
No. It just annoys me that I don't know. If I would expect to be sacked if that was me in my job. In my normal working job where I get paid to be there and I work, 5 days a week.
Steve,
if I fuck up to that level, I'm cool to be shown the door.
I think part of the problem is, as I've explained earlier, I'm not sure that the board or necessarily Pete see it as their job, right? Because they're focused on being an NGB and hitting all the buttons that are needed to get the sports councils on board with them and build strategic partnerships with the NFL and CFL and IFAF. They don't have a focus on running the league or the leagues. right? So that's the I can't speak for them, but I believe that their answer is, well, that's the volunteers, and they trusted some
Fucking
volunteers,
hell.
and it all
So they're
all
taking
went
the money
wrong.
from that. Like they're happy to take all the money from it, but just no accountability to it. I could. I could go on all day.
Let's keep
absolute
positive. Let's
criminals.
keep positive about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to sway you either way. I'm just sharing my opinion. But yeah,
we've agreed to meet and look for a positive way forward.
Yeah.
Now, if that doesn't happen, well, then then you have to start thinking about, okay, where do we go from here? And one of the obvious things is that if BAFA aren't going to run the league, they shouldn't be running the league. And is there another organisation that might run the league? I don't know.
Yeah.
Or would one develop? I mean, I have said, and I believe this to be an absolute fact, because remember, I've been around since the time when we had 12 different leagues in this country, not in Europe, 12 different leagues in this country, right?
Yeah.
And, different leagues popped up, and they, some of them worked successfully and some of them a whole lot less successfully, right? The finger in the dike of breakaway leagues right now is BAFA.
Yep.
They are the finger in the dike because people won't set up an alternative league because they can't get officials, because BAFA are committed to BAFA, right? So two things. Firstly, if BAFA said we're going to go with the highest bidder, that could cause the event of a breakaway league, right? Mm-hmm. Or if teams are not getting officials because of the way BAFA is structured, there's nothing to stop people saying, well, if we're going to self-officiate, we might as well have a breakaway league and pay a whole lot less money into it.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to see that happen. And the group that I'm working with don't want to see that happen. We believe passionately that the sport being united is far better the way to go forward, which is why we're looking for these solutions.
Cool.
And then, sorry, Steve, just a couple, one point for me, just to reiterate the point that Steve made about offering for other teams to get involved. The more teams get involved, the more difficult it is for BAFA not to listen to them. And secondly, yes, the focus in terms of the resolution is on the adult league, but we also need to have the feedback from the under-16, the under-19 and the women's league, because there's also been problems in those leagues as well. And we need, the whole of the contact game to get better. So, so for those other clubs, under-16, under-19s, women's teams, come forward as well and get involved.
Cool.
We've already got some under-19 teams.
Yeah, we have. Yeah,
actually are within the 20. So.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I don't know if you're at liberty to say, but one of the questions that's come up a couple of times is who's the 20th team? Are you able to share
Yeah, the 20th team is the Berkshire Renegades, joined on Sunday. But also I'm waiting on, and I can't tell you who these are, obviously, because they're talking amongst themselves. There are 3 other teams that are now considering wanting to be part of the group.
Good. It's good to hear. Right, so I'm just going to go through these comments. This one was, I've only read the beginning of it. I know it's a nice comment about Clive. So Clive's done a superb job with the Silent Seahawks, was instrumental in growing that program. BAFA seem to think every time anyone questions it's a personal attack as opposed to trying to grow the game. I suppose that aligns to what you were saying there as well. Lindsay said, are all team now I think you just answered this actually. Are all the teams adult teams? Wondering if there's any other contact football disciplines represented. So I know she's specifically talking about women's there. You just reeled off a few other. What other?
Well,
what is a member, and who are they? Who are the members?
The members of BAFA are the clubs. So a club is a member of BAFA. We would welcome any women's team that want to join the group. We'd also like to hear from them what ideas they'd like to be discussed for the women's league on the 4th of August. Like I said, the list that I've just gone through is not exclusive, and you don't have to sign up to say this is what we think should happen just because you join the group. These are things for discussion, and we already have 2 under-19 organisations involved in the 20.
Okay, cool. Joe's just mentioned, could there be a time where teams break away from BAFA? Now, I think you just covered that yourself, Coach, where that's not the aim. We don't want that. In terms of could it happen, I suppose, yes, but the whole idea is, and I certainly throw my hat into that. Like, I don't think we need it. Like, there's people saying we need a new NGB and we need new leagues, and I don't think that. I think we've got the wrong people in place. I know you're not that far gone with this. I've got I'm probably a bit more strict and short tempered and short of patience than your group, but yeah, I don't see how. Well, first of all, you can't have a second NGB anyway. I just think BAFA is the right organisation. We just need the right. For me, we just need the right people. But you're saying we just need the right. I don't know. Forum,
think
essentially.
Yeah. Let me say this, right? And remember, I worked with some of these people for over a year on the BAFA board, and for what they're focused on, the NGB stuff, right? The relationships with the sports councils, the strategic relationships with other football organisations, I think there are some really good people on there. Really good people. I think the issue for me is there's something missing, and what's missing is anyone with a focus on league football, right? In my view, they've got the job of running the league, but they don't have any focus on it at all. So it's happening, but it's not being worked on. I think that's probably the kindest. I'm trying to find the kindest way to say it, right? Okay, it's happening, but it's not being worked on. So it's not being progressed, and it's not in the plan, and it needs to be. It has to be, because I think what they don't appreciate, or maybe they're starting to appreciate, I hope, is that all of the other bits that they are caring about and looking after are not going to function if the base product falls apart. Yeah.
Andrew Jones he's just mentioned a little bit about Div 2, saying they should have 10 games, and he feels that they're penalised as lower divisions for their growth and development. So they obviously has only with 8 games. He said specifically the Southwest Div 2 has only 4 teams now, and you play 2 teams 3 times. I think there's one division that's got 3 teams actually. I'm fairly sure there's one. It doesn't, but that's because a team dropped out. But still, it doesn't support the growth. It will also help it with the official situation going back to bigger conferences.
I actually agree with that. Of course, there is an argument that goes against it, that says you're going to increase travelling, and you'll get your annual complaint about, oh look, this team's got to go from here to there. Bucks are having it now with Plymouth to Aberystwyth, that sort of stuff, and sometimes you can't avoid that. If you're going to have bigger divisions, right? But again, for me, it is an indication of the fact that the thing is running but not getting the attention that it needs. That has happened in the lower divisions. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that they're on an 8-game season, but moves need to be made to make sure that if they do have 8 games, the first step should be make it 8 meaningful games. Right, not the same team 6 times, or or same teams or whatever. So make them 8 meaningful games, and make them games that are actually going to happen and not get forfeited, right? And then, obviously, if you can, work back to a 10-game season.
I think you've got your first women's issue here, the women's game issue here that I think will potentially be added. So essentially, there's an issue at the moment with the playoffs not being confirmed, and then they've said so. Essentially, the bottom line is the most important. Even if they announce the playoffs tonight, it would be too late for many people to arrange in their diaries. I know it goes back to another organisational piece, which is what a lot of this stuff feels like. You know, again, like you say, like they're looking upwards and outwards at strategic relationships and, you know, governing body level stuff, and we're, you know, and we're suffering now at, you know, at the down in the weeds, where we just want to be able to play fixtures and for it to not impact our lives greatly.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, basically, if competition management was a car, it would have failed its MOT this year because all the wheels have come off.
Yeah. Russ, I think you've already talked about this, but you said why has there not been any discussion with BAFA on the sudden changes they've made for the player format, red and yellow card? But you've mentioned that in the the red and yellow card.
Well, the reason there has not been is because, one, it was done without consultation and without warning.
Yeah.
So there was no opportunity, and this is part of the point that we're making, is that there has to be, you know, like I said, when I joined the board, the whole thing was, you know, we're going to be more open, we're going to be more transparent, everything's going to be, you know, we're going to connect with the members. It's gone backwards. That's not happening. What we're trying to do with this, I don't know, do we call it a movement or whatever we call it, right? What we're trying to do with this attempt to get a discussion at an EGM and now at a dedicated meeting is to get those things on the table to be discussed.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if you look at the kind of the teams, the clubs meeting that me and Steve did, we set out at that meeting all the playoff states and the playoff format before the season even started. And teams have got the right to know that. I think the whole playoff format this year, I think is going to come out in terms of some of the problems they've been. So if you look at kind of the under-19s league, or sorry, the under-16s league, I think it's in, you know, there are teams which were playing for playoffs. One team played the top team twice. The other team, who were battling in terms of a final spot, didn't play the top team at all, because the way they did the teams dropping out was all on equal divisions. You didn't play all the teams, and you didn't play some teams at all. So if you look at kind of the playoff structure, it's not a level playing field. So the teams going to the final aren't necessarily, you know, credit all those teams who got there, not taking it away from them at all. But if one team doesn't play the top team at all, and another team plays them twice, that's not a even playing field.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And take Division 2, where out of the blue, only one team makes the playoffs. So if a team has a bad start, loses their first game or two, even if they then make a recovery and become maybe the best team in their division, they're out.
Yeah. Mikey Gray is he's basically said a lot of stuff that we've already mentioned, but I just wanted to make sure I got it up. He spent the time to type this out, but he said he can't understand why the people in the positions they have, if they have no interest in the league. The BAFA NL is light years behind other European leagues. An amateur sport it may be, but it shouldn't be run amateur. Yes. Find sponsors, promote the sport, engage with members, make a spectacle of Brit Bowl. It seems like years and years of neglect are coming to fruition. It's as if the league is run on autopilot, and that's putting it light.
I think it comes back, Steve, to the point that I'm making, that BAFA are developing themselves to be a good NGB.
Yes.
But they're not developing themselves at all to run a league. So either the league has to be run outside of BAFA, or BAFA have to put a structure within itself that focuses on league football that can run it properly. Because right now, it's broken.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay also said, fully and wholly agree with the membership registration point that you raised. I've seen it year after year, big obstacle on how to get women into the sport. And then on the same vein, Nathan has sort of supported it, saying with the massive increase in living costs, people are going to struggle to pay membership fees in November, between November and January. So sort of makes sense to move it.
Yeah.
Right, let me just. Sorry, I haven't got any further on the comments here. Let me just see what there is. I don't want to pop something up that's like calling me a dickhead or something.
Sorry.
Go on.
Sorry. I was going to say it would probably be about me anyway, not about you. If it just says Steve.
Yeah. I'll take it personally anyway. Right.
Right.
Was it not possible to enforce a foreign player limit due to legal reasons? It was all or nothing.
No, that's absolutely not true, Ollie. If you look at all of the leagues in Europe, and they are running on the European legislation that we were running on until Brexit, they have restrictions on certain nationalities, number of, right? Mainly because the restriction is on non-EU citizens. It doesn't break EU law, right? Of course, now it would be down to whatever immigration law we're putting in here, but at the moment EU citizens can't come, right? So there's the discrimination, if you like. The discrimination is against the rest of the world unless you live in the UK right now, because that is a fact. Now, whether teams are finding any loopholes is a question, but the fact of the matter is you should not have a foreign national in your team unless they've been resident in the UK for 6 months. Okay. And, there we are. Unless it's somebody on a student visa or US military.
Cool. From what I can see, the topic of forfeits or unfulfilled fixtures seem to have triggered a lot of comments. So I'll just quickly sort of flash them up, and I don't think there's anything else to sort of really for us to really react to. But quoting you there, saying it's too easy to not play games is such a true and sad statement. Teams rather concede games than pay travel costs if their reasonings.
What he's saying is they're saving the money on the travel. Yeah.
This one's interesting. Northants have had 3 cancelled games, which aligns to only playing 2. And as a result, haven't had a game for 10 plus weeks. And we're in week 15 of the league.
Yeah, that's shameful. It's sorry, but it's shameful. And I am confident that that wouldn't have happened with the red and yellow card system. And if it had happened with the red and yellow card system, then those teams who are that unreliable would be in the associate process trying to get back into the league next year.
Yep. Someone just mentioned that you can't take over the league as he is that you're running per PM.
I'd have to be in a party I'm not in for that. So,
if a CEO can justify their position where they're bringing in more money into the sport than they're taking out, then yes, absolutely. But I don't see. I don't think it's anywhere close to this in this instance. No, yeah, I think that Owen, you sort of encapsulated the whole mindset towards that CEO position, and probably Steve's here. I often say to people, I don't see why it's not one of the key things that the CEO is doing. If he brought in 4x his known salary or his base salary, right, then no one would complain about it, right? Like, no one would complain about that appointment, that position. The problem is that what they're doing is taking money from their already existing revenue streams, increasing increasing participation fees, and that's what's upsetting everyone. But yeah, that would be a great solution. If
that is precisely why I resigned.
Yeah,
I didn't want to. I was enjoying doing what Clive and I were doing in terms of operating the league or the leagues, because it was the whole structure. I was enjoying doing that, but there was the decision taken to bring in the paid CEO, and that wasn't one of the KPIs for the job.
Yeah.
So revenue generation was not in the job description, and I felt that on that basis it was the wrong decision. still feel that if we were going to spend money, we should be structuring ourselves better and pay for administration. But the majority of the board, in fact, everybody else except me, thought that it was the right thing to do. So it was obvious that, I couldn't remain in that situation, because there was also this thing of you can't be critical. So the minute I came onto one of your forums and said, this is a bad idea, it was like, okay, he's got to go. Because I had actually said that I would stay to the end of the season that year, but literally the day I put up something that was not in agreement with the BAFA decision, my email account was shut off, and that was the end of that. And I had to do a handover to Clive as best I could without access to any of my emails. So
this one's come through from YouTube. Someone's just mentioning about moving under 16s to 7-a-side. Could we end up losing teams, as at present some sides are struggling with just 5-a-side?
Yeah, should I pick up that? That really wasn't the point I was making. I think for the reasons Steve said in the international game in adult football, a move for under 16s to 7s, to under 19s to 11s into the adult game is the long-term goal. I think that this year was the wrong time to do it, and I think next time's the wrong time to do it because of the point raised in the email. The criticism I was making was the lack of consultation and the lack of engagement with teams about that. And I think if they had engaged with teams about it, they would have been told that a lot of teams would fall away. So actually, although long term, I think a move to 7s should be the long-term goal, I think the way they tried it this year led to a lot of the problems and highlights the lack of engagement by BAFA with clubs.
And I think there's another really key point here, and that is, if you're going to make that sort of change, you should make the change based on the knowledge that you've put in some support to help teams achieve the transition. Not just say, it's going to 7s, over to you guys, good luck. 7. We want 7s, good luck. So it should be an informed decision to say, we're at taking Clive's point on, we're at a point now where this is sustainable and we can do it, not just throw it in there and hope.
Alexander Ross has said, is there a list of the 20 teams currently involved published anywhere? And I think Tebs then posted our link, a Sport Tank link, where we've it
was on my letter. So
it is publicly available. Have a look at our website, and I don't know, we might post a link in. Well, I think Tebs has posted a link. We might post a link again. Chris Warren from Oxford Saints has said our engagement includes our youth setup. So that's
so we got 3 youth involved then. Thanks, Chris.
Just confirming that earlier statement. Playoff dates for women's football would be nice. We're going into tournament 3 and this hasn't been sorted. Lindsay reacting earlier saying that sounds positive, and then she asks the NWFL teams to reach out so that they can all chat, which is good. It'll be good if they sort of come to, if they maybe chat first and and then come to
I mean, I'll be honest, the reason I didn't put anything into the original letter was that I don't know enough about women's football to be sort of trying to pretend I can speak for it. But if we can get somebody on board and get some teams on board, then I think it is important. And I actually put on the bottom of the letter, although this is really predominantly about adult and junior contact, we believe the same thing should be happening for women's football and flag.
Tebs has popped up and said, what can we do now in your opinion? I'm about to join a club and just can't be dealing with giving BAFA my cat. We've got no choice, right? Like that, you can't not give your money to them. You must be registered to play. We're not talking about a rebellion here, right? Everything needs to be covered correctly. I just think
from Teb's point of view, let's try and keep him positive, right? We've got the meeting on the 4th of August. I hope we're going to make some positive progress, and he will feel much warmer about writing or signing off on that credit card payment. Cool. I nearly said writing a check. No one does this anymore.
No, yeah, no such thing.
I mean, hands up anybody that in a restaurant doesn't go, "Can I have the bill, please?" Yeah. Young people wonder what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, my wife often takes a piss at me because that's what I do. NGB could be something that could be. All right, I'm just gonna. Sorry, it's just a lot of people chatting to each other. I just want to make sure I'm bringing up the right stuff. James Harris has said, "You look at the way ice hockey is run in this country, and it's embarrassing for football. Football is much bigger outreach than hockey. Yet hockey are getting hundreds paying in attendance and have set up infrastructure to support player development in Europe. No reason why that can't happen in football." I think we've said that.
Totally agree with him. No reason it can't happen. Bottom line, at the moment, our product's not good enough, and that's because we don't allow anyone that's not resident in this country to play in our league.
Yeah. And that's the last question.
No, unfortunately not. It's just not. Some of the group of 20 had asked to come in virtually, and just so you know, in my professional career, I was an industrial relations negotiator, firstly for a trade union, and then on the management side, so been both sides of the table. When you're in a negotiating meeting, there are times where you have to take a time out and go and discuss stuff amongst yourself, because what you cannot do is have a blazing row amongst your own delegation during the course of a negotiation. That's the surefire 100% way to not just lose that point, but probably the whole thrust of the meeting. So, and I think to do that and to try and do it and move people virtually at the same time would be really difficult. So I'm really sorry, but I've said that it needs to be physical attendance.
Yeah. Okay. And then Teb's just backing up. I've always thought this about ice hockey as well. Yeah, it's a good sport for us to compare ourselves to. Especially when Teb says, especially when we've got NFL games here. So, in closing, I suppose, so you're open for more teams to be involved. You seem to be openly inviting. There seems to be an open invitation actually for that.
It is probably absolutely.
How can they get involved? How do they get hold of you?
Well, firstly, they can get hold of me via Facebook. I think most people can do that, and then we've got a Facebook chat group with the 20 teams in, so that we're communicating with each other and we know what's going on. I've kept the group updated with the responses from BAFA, and then our discussion with Pete, so they know exactly what went on there, and the fact that we're organising the meeting on the 4th of August, which is a Thursday. That's going to be in the Midlands somewhere, and if teams are able to send someone along to that, like I said, the venue's not finalised at this point, but BAFA have spoken about getting in a hotel close to a motorway or something like that. So there should be plenty enough room for people.
Okay, cool. And I'll just say as well, if people just want to contact Sport Tank, we can help you get their details as well. We're happy to support that. Is there anything else either of you guys wanted to say before we wrap up? I think we covered things quite nicely, actually.
Yeah, I hope so. And I'll just emphasize again, this is about positively trying to work with BAFA. It's not any sort of, revolution to try and overturn people, right? It's trying to get things right for our sport because we care.
Cool. Well, thank you both for coming on. It's been great chatting to you, and
thanks for the opportunity, because as with everything, there's rumors fly around, and you've given us the opportunity to address some of those.
Well, I think for me it was the best format, because me having this conversation with you guys and then trying to write it all out and relay it, it's better to do the old horse's mouth thing, right? Let's get you both on. Let's let people ask you questions, as long as you're willing to. I know a lot of people aren't, but yeah, I think it was the best way to get the information across. But we appreciate it, and good luck. I certainly, if I was a member, I'd be on it. But we're not, just a media outlet. So, but yeah, no, appreciate both of your time, gents, and
Okay.
thanks very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a
Cheers,
lot.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye bye.